Hey, Talking Cars fans. We're making plans for our 4th of July episode, and we want to hear from you. So we want to know, what does it mean for a car to be considered American? Does it have to be built here, come from a company based in the US? And what do you consider to be the most American vehicle of all time? Email or text a video to talkingcars@icloud.com and give us your definition of what it means for a car to be American and what you think is the most epic, iconic American car ever. We're going to choose our favorite responses and include them in the podcast. That's talkingcars@icloud.com. Now, on to the show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
And I'm Mike Monticello.
And this episode, we get to talk about something pretty cool for this threesome right here. It's sports car. There's a new sports car on the horizon, the Nissan Z. We rented one from Nissan because we will be buying our own. A little history of the Z car. Introduced in 1969 as the Fairlady Z, went through iterations, the 240Z, the 260Z, the 280Z. It was redesigned as the 300ZX, 280ZX, excuse me. Then it became two generations of the 300ZX, including a kind of supercar version of the era that went up against the Toyota Supra, went against the Mitsubishi 3000 GT, some of those other kind of overly technical, getting portly Japanese supercars that are now on Bring a Trailer for like $100,000. Anyhow, it then was it departed after 96, arrived in 2002 as a rebirthed car, the 350Z. So new platform, new look. We tested it. We had one. 2009 it was redesigned, introduced as a 370Z, and it ran till 2020, at which point it disappeared. And there's all kinds of, hey, there's going to be a new Z in a world like this, a sports car or a Z. I don't know. Anyway, so we rented one from Nissan. Lots of options, a performance version, automatic transmission, Q Monty with the thumbs down. Yeah. We can give you pricing. Look online for our first drive. It'll give you at consumerreports.org. It'll give you all the details. Monty, is this a new car? Because everyone's talking about the all new Z, but doesn't really sound like it from some of the specs, right?
Well, first of all, John, you really know your Zs. That was a great history of the Z over the years. And for a lot of us, of course, go ahead.
I didn't even mention the Datsun Z, and then it became Nissan.
Well, that's what it was originally. It was a Datsun 240Z in the U.S. And later on, obviously, became Nissan. But I think anyone would be forgiven for thinking after the Z taking a few years off, and knowing that this new one was coming, that this would be, from the ground up clean sheet design. Now it's not, and we can get into later on in the show if you want to debate whether that is good or bad. I think there's some positives to both for sure. But the reality is it's based on the exact same platform as the outgoing 370Z. It has the exact same wheelbase as the previous car, the same door openings. I know that's a weird thing to mention, but it actually, has something to do with the structure of the car and how different it really is. Most of the outer skin is new. The 6-speed manual, which, you mentioned the automatic in this car we rented, but there is a 6-speed manual as well, which we're very excited about. The 6-speed manual, essentially carryover, other than, they say an improvement to the linkage. Brakes basically carry over. Tune for better response. That's a typical manufacturer thing. They say that about anything that they change, tune for better response. Always the whole, we adjusted the suspension for better ride and handling, which, typically you don't get both, but you can. Anyway, the 9-speed automatic, that's what we have for this in this rented one, replacing the previous 7-speed. It's actually not a brand new automatic. Again, maybe that doesn't matter, but it comes from, believe it or not, the Frontier and the Titan pickups. With a magnesium outer casing, to save some weight. They did add two very important components to this car that I think people are going to be really excited about. A telescoping steering wheel, which it didn't have before, and a second cup holder. Now, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. That is true that they did add those. But there is some new stuff here. And the important thing, I think the most important thing about this car is the twin turbo V6 that they have now put in this thing. Makes 400 horsepower. And but I want to say, even with that, that's new to the Z. it's not new to the Nissan Infiniti family. It's from, you can get that engine already in the Q50 Red Sport 400 and the Q60 Red Sport 400. So again, it's not brand new, but we can get into whether that even matters. I mean, they also went from hydraulic steering to electric power steering. That's typically not a good thing, and we can talk about that as well. Again, typical manufacturer thing. They'll say, that gives them more flexibility and, steering feel and those kinds of things. But the bottom line is, when you look at it, it sure looks brand new. And I think it looks fantastic, especially from the rear and from the sides. And we can get into the driving. I should stop talking, but this thing's a ripper.
So let's get into it. Let's get it on. Let's Ryan. What's it like to drive?
So
you get some time on this podcast too, not just me and Monty.
I'll tell you what, some of this, Monty talks about, some of these things, do they matter or not? Because it's not completely brand new. Some of it does matter. For me, this automatic is unacceptable. Okay. And I'm going to be harsh here. If you're putting an automatic, a semi-traditional automatic, especially a 9-speed, from a Nissan Frontier and Titan, am I correct? You said the Titan as well?
Yep.
Yeah. Into a sports car. This is a full-blown sports car with 400 horsepower. The power is fantastic. We'll talk about that in a second. If you're not benchmarking this against the ZF that BMW uses in the Supra and the Z4 or a Porsche PDK automatic, you're wasting your time. This automatic is mushy. It's not sporty. You've got the paddle shifts. They're slow. It doesn't backfire when you shift. It does none of the fun stuff. I think that was a huge miss point on the automatics part, because there are people that are going to want this car in an automatic, and that's great. So I've had a blast in a lot of sports cars with good automatics in them. This is not a good automatic for this car. I'm sorry. And I get they were trying to use things they already had. Probably it's cheaper for from their perspective. I cannot wait to drive this in a manual. I'm reserving some thoughts and judgment until we drive the actual manual. Because Monty said it already. This motor. This car absolutely rips. I mean, it screams, it wails. Each gear feels so long. I don't even know why it needs 9 gears. I mean, it's insane. It takes off like I don't know what. I mean, I was super impressed with that. The chassis itself, it does feel. I mean, it's been a while since I drove the 370Z, but it kind of reminds me of it. It still has the same kind of like sitting on the rear axle feel. A little bit twitchy at the limits. I got to drive it around the track and. I mean, I spent a lot of time hand over hand when I turned the stability off, just kind of feeling it out, and it's a blast. It's a little bit of a challenge, which I appreciate. It's not just a given drift car by any means, but it's fantastic. I have a hard time with that automatic. It's just not like it doesn't add any experience, any thrill to it. Rather, it's just I don't know. I
agree. I mean, the previous generation, having driven it. Having had students at track days, I mean, the chassis is great. The chassis works. Fun car to drive. The automatic, it's slow. 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. No matter if you're in normal or sport mode, it's extremely slow. Even in manual mode, even pulling the paddle, it's extremely slow. Which makes it awkward if you're not, if you're in a back road situation, for example, because you're not sure when it's engaging. On the highway, it's fine, but also it tends to upshift very quickly. And when it's in auto mode, again, sport or normal, apparently for fuel economy. So unless you're mashing it, it's bump bump bump, and then you floor it, and it's guessing ratios. Big ratio jumps down, like you said. Could be cost, could be whatever. It's a niche market. Let's be honest. I mean, as much as we would love to have them everywhere, sports cars are a niche market. But Monty, I gave my I didn't have a time on the track with it. I know you guys had much more time. Monty, give us your feelings on it.
Sure. So I didn't drive it on the track, but I took it on one of my favorite roads. Actually had a great night with it. Took my girlfriend on an awesome back road over to get ice cream. I mean, you can't in a fantastic sports car. It don't get any better than that for me. I'm a pretty simple guy. The only thing that would have made it even better was we went for pizza or something. But because I am a child. But and
if it was a manual, but it's okay. You couldn't hold your ice cream man shift. So
when I first got in the car, I'm like, I had to find the seat controls on the right side of the seat near the center console, just like the last Z. And that's when it immediately hits you like, oh my gosh, this isn't a new car at all, and I know that there are some new parts in it, and then, feeling around, there's still a lot of hard plastic bits. It doesn't feel like the build quality of, say, a Supra or a BMW Z4 or an Audi TT, anything like that. And then I started driving it down the road, and I'm like, and we have a pretty bumpy road right outside the track. And I'm like, God, this thing's bouncing around, or not really bouncing. It's just very stiff. And I'm like, oh boy. And then I was getting onto the road off of the road near our track. And of course I wooded it, because that's what you do. Gave it full throttle, and the rear, with stability control on, rear came around on me. And then I'm going through the gears, and I'm like, oh, heck yeah. Anything I said before, forget it. This is fun. But I will say, I totally experienced those issues with, I drove it almost, I drove it in paddle shift mode the entire time, and sport mode the entire time, except when I was bringing it back to the track. I'm like, oh crap. As a automotive journalist, I probably should at least try it in the regular automatic mode. But I agree that,
or be nice to the neighbors at least.
Yeah, I agree that, when you are going up through the gears in first and second, third, you have to be very careful to shift earlier than you might think, because it takes so long to shift it. Like, I don't know if it runs into the Revlin, but just like you're going and then it goes again. So you shouldn't, like Ryan said, it should crack off those shifts super quick. That's the benefit of a dual clutch automatic or dual clutch transmission, which this is not. Ryan, I think you mentioned Porsches or whatever. If you're not going to put a great automatic in it, which people can, then you need a dual clutch. Unfortunately, with dual clutches comes the low speed drivability, which is a whole nother story. But the downshifts also are not that crisp and clean and swift. So they definitely missed the boat there. But beyond that, once you're going and you're just making sure you're not, getting close to, the point where the shift's going to take really long, between 5,000 to 7,000 RPM, it sounds glorious. I mean, it's almost shocking that this is a stock car. Yeah, Wales, it's almost shocking that the stock car is this loud. I loved it. It misses some decelerative burbling and cracking like the Supra has, right?
But that's okay, because honestly, there were so many aftermarket software things. Everyone's Civic, HF from 10 years ago burbles and cracks because they drive around town leaning back in a slam.
That didn't bother me, but the full throttle, getting up 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 RPM, it sounds awesome. You hear a fair amount of induction noise, which is totally fine. I think the whole thing sounds fantastic. The handling's really spot on. I didn't have a chance to take it out on our track, unfortunately, but the roads I took it on, I thought the steering, I wish, again, a little more feel, but considering that they went from hydraulic to electric, I thought it wasn't too bad. It has a pretty natural feel to it, as far as like it has a good heft, and man, it's glued to the road. Feels moderately forgiving. I didn't take it on the track, so I didn't get to push it the way Ryan did, but it has awesome abilities, and man, in terms of acceleration and handling, you're going to have a great time in this car. And that's what that's what it's all about. And, at some point we need to talk about the price, that it starts at, about $40,000 with 400 horsepower. You're just not going to get that kind of performance in a 2-seat sports car. It just, like the Toyota Supra, as much as we love it, that's cheaper than the starting point of the turbocharged 4-cylinder Supra. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's a bargain when you think of $1 per horsepower, right? I mean, that's 400 horsepower is nothing to scoff at nowadays, especially in a car the size and a sport car. I mean, it's got one job to go fast, so it
and 40,000.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's a bargain there. That's for sure.
I mean, the version so this is the point where I say that Nissan made sure to tell us that this was a pre-production model. So perhaps there will be some software tuning to the transmission. We'll give that the benefit of the doubt. Ours came in at 49,990. It comes loaded. So you're talking, the car with the 18-inch wheels, it's the same all around. The 19-inch wheels that we have, they're staggered. So they're 255/40 fronts, 275/35 rears. This is power seats, heated seats and mirrors, chin spoiler, rear spoiler, aero aids,
How'd you feel about the interior? I thought it was kind of a little cheese-ish, bright, kind of gaudy, if you will.
The interior. So I'm going to think back to the 350, 370 Z era, where you got in the car and you heard the engine and the exhaust note, and then you heard it again reverberating around the interior the entire time. And I mean, the car gave you a headache. Yeah. It was plastic. It was Playmobil, Lego, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. It was loud inside. And as another person who drove the car mentioned, there's like 2 or 3 levels of carpeting in the back, in the hatch cargo area. And they did a good job keeping it quieter. There's noise back here, but it's not just a cacophony. The interior is fine. I mean, like Monty said, it's not up to the standards of, let's just say it's not the Germans, and Toyota Supra's part of that, with the Germans, but it's nicer. It does have an infotainment system, and I know that's not the point of the car, but that seems to be a generation behind, as if it, they got it on sale or something. Way updated. It just always seems to be like it's like they got the on sale version.
It's a decent infotainment, I think. It's easy to use. I mean, I thought, it might not be the latest and greatest, but
no, it is. I used the native map, and that wasn't great, the native nav, but
right.
Again, it's not the point of it. It works. It gets the job done. Everything falls at hand very well. A nice diameter steering wheel, pretty good visibility. It's funny driving an old car that I have and being able to see like exactly where you're putting the left front wheel on a crack in the road. Whereas this one, you're sitting down lower, you have a long hood, and, safety is a lot different now, in a vehicle like this than a 30-year-old car. But you could place it where you want. Visibility of the front and side's pretty good. The rear is the rear. It's a really fun car, but with some flaws. Most notably, at least in this version of the automatic.
Yeah, the seats didn't work, or the driver's seat really didn't work for me. And again, if we haven't talked about it before, seats are very much a personal thing. So just because it doesn't work for my deformed body doesn't mean it won't work for 90% of everyone else out there. For me, the seat back was just too hard. I loved the blue color. I don't know why, but I didn't need all the other blue, to be honest with you. I would have been good with just the blue seats. It was over blued, and I love blue, but the seats.
You look out the windshield. You don't look down. You look out ahead of you.
But so the seat back was just too hard for me. And the bolsterings, the side bolstering, is decent, but like I would say, I think the cars we've had recently, GTI, Volkswagen GTI, Honda Civic Si, Subaru WRX, for me, their seats all work considerably better than this one. I need more time in it. I need more time in the one that we end up buying. So for me, and the dead pedal, the left footrest is just too angled forwards for my left foot, so I don't feel like I have that I have to reach for it more than I feel like I should. Yeah. And then just basically the seat controls. That's the only other thing that really bothers me on the inside, but I didn't even think about most of this stuff while I was driving it, because as we talked about, it's just so fun to drive. That's what this car is all about. And I also think when it's sitting in your driveway, I don't care what anyone else thinks about the way my car looks, but I want to look at it. And I loved looking at it from especially the rear is just so cool. I don't know how they got it right.
One of the perks of driving this car around, I got to drive it for a night. It turns heads. I mean, people are like, you could notice when people are looking at you while you're driving. And we've all driven some pretty cool cars here, and there's certain cars that turn heads, and this is certainly one of them. I mean, it's got that like vintagey look from the rear with the taillights, and then it's a spectacular. I mean, we don't rate obviously on looks, but this is a spectacular looking car. I think they did a nice job blending kind of like a bunch of generations sort of into this thing. Yeah. But how's the driving position for you guys? I know that the wheel is telescoping now, telescopes. It didn't telescope enough for me, and the steering wheel felt a little big. The cockpit's a little tight. So when I was driving it on the track, I found myself I got kind of meaty legs. So I was kind of bumping into my legs a little bit. You guys are a little leaner than I am. So maybe you didn't have that issue, but
I didn't have it on the track, so it just worked for me driving around. Could I nitpick it? Yeah, sure. I couldn't dial in the seat perfectly. I think I adjusted the lumbar support. The three of us are like the poster children for chiropractic and orthopedic work. So we each need fine tuning of the seats. Yeah,
Sure.
it worked. It worked for me.
It worked for me too. And one thing that I complain about a lot is center console intrusion. I really didn't have that here. So I was, again, I'm a little smaller than both you guys, but it was nice that I wasn't, being infringed. My right knee wasn't being infringed upon. My right knee really doesn't like being infringed.
All in all, hats off. I think they did a great job with this car. And I know I harped on that automatic. I can't wait to drive the manual. I think that's going to be the ultimate. But the automatic in this car just kind of took some fun out of it for me.
So we're supposed to get a manual. That's what's on our plan sheet. I don't know who's, where it is in the process. That's before the unfortunate COVID era dealer markup changeover,
microchip shortage, all that
everyone may or may not suffer from. But yeah, that's the plan. It's a good segue to this, that we will have a first drive on this car on consumerreports.org. It'll definitely go into some detail, what we like, what we don't like, what we'll keep our eye on when we test the car. So that's going to bring us to our question for the episode. As always, send your questions, texts, and videos, TalkingCars@iCloud.com. That's TalkingCars@iCloud.com. So right now, we have a question from Torsten. So take it away.
Hey, Talking Cars. Need your advice. I think it's time to grow up from my 2018 Ford Mustang GT convertible. I'm looking for a four-door sports car, trying to decide between the BMW M550 or the Mercedes AMG E53. A little worried about the E53 overly complicated electronics, and I sure do love the twin-turbo V8 550. So any advice? Is there something else I'm not thinking about? And keep on talking cars.
So, Torsten, you're looking at some pretty sporty, some pretty meaty German performance cars. I'll right off the bat, we don't get a ton of data on the AMG versions of these cars reliability-wise. So I'm going to throw it to Ryan as our resident in-house German car guy. Puts me to shame. And I want your opinion on it, because he asks M550, E53 AMG, something else to get out of his Mustang. What do you think?
So a quick answer, I would go for the M550. The better controls inside. And at first I had to look, because I didn't realize that the M550 is on a level playing field. That's not an M5, but it's on a level playing field with the E55 or the E53 AMG, which is name-wise you would think where it would be like on the M5 level, but actually horsepower-wise they're very comparable. But I would go for the M550. Another car to consider would be an S6, Audi S6, or even an S7. So.
Yeah, I love the S7. I think he answered his own question. Well, first of all, he's a Mustang GT guy. So he's clearly a V8 guy. He said he loves the BMW's turbocharged V8. And, I say always go with your gut. That's why I eat so much pizza and ice cream, because I go with my gut. He needs to go with his gut here. He's feeling like he's worried about the Mercedes controls, but he loves the BMW's V8. Go with it. That's what you want. Do it.
Yeah, it seems the BMW, this generation of the BMW, from what I researched, hasn't had reliability issues as much as the previous generation. I had the generations written down, the F generation versus the C, I believe. BMW fans, you can attack me in the comments, but the previous generation did have some issues, some engine issues. This one right now doesn't seem to be. I do like the way the AMG, some of the AMG cars that we have had rented, driven, certainly fun. I do wish BMW M Performance versions were a little more roarty, if you will, like older ones, and a little less, luxury cruisers that were really performance cars. But I would definitely go with the BMW as well. And like you said, the controls, particularly coming from the Mustang. Yeah, that's gonna have that grunt, like Monty said.
Yeah, so let us know, Torsten, let us know which one you buy, and if you love it as much as we think, you're gonna love it if you get the BMW. Not that you'll hate the Mercedes, because that's a great car too.
So that's going to do it for this episode. As always, send us your questions, text, video, whatever you got. Carrier pigeon, maybe. TalkingCars@iCloud.com. We want your questions. We want some tough ones, and love to go deep into our knowledge base. So once again, Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.